per the business guru Peter Drucker, three things happen in an organization naturally, and these are friction, confusion, and underperformance. But if you really want to stop these three things, you need leader, and that is what we talk about in today's session, leadership in crisis times. So what exactly makes a leadership important in an organization, and how a leader should ensure there are no friction, no crisis, no underperformance. When the business goes through tough times, we always find that we take a decision to take an action on the people of the company. And we also find that when there are bad times, the leaders are always questioned because we think that the leaders are the ones who are responsible. So similarly, the leader has to always take on all the blame on himself. Similarly, at the time when the company is doing good, the leader has to be generous enough in sharing all the credit to his team member. Do you know that most of the time the problem which we find in the organization is because of the people problem? Yes, 90% of the time it has been seen that the problems which you face in organization is because of the people problem, and rest are all process problem. So if you can really solve the people problem, your entire 90% of the problem of the organization is gone. And if you are talking about organizational effectiveness, then you have to understand that every organization can be effective, but it is the kind of leadership which really gives shape to your organization that is important. So when we are talking about people problem, it is not maybe the people problem, it is the leadership problem. So all these things we are going to talk about today, my friends. Leadership in crisis. I'm Premankur. I'm basically an international speaker, mind trainer, and a business coach. Today I'm basically here for an interesting and a wonderful topic. So stay tuned, keep listening for more information on leadership in crisis times. So today basically when we talk about most of the organizations, we can find that they're either struggling how to exactly handle the crisis. That most of the organizations are going for a firing stage. Most of them are taking a decision to lay off their employees. So how much it is correct, how much it is ethical to trim the system or to go for a kind of a trim business model. So maybe whenever we talk about the effectiveness and the productivity of the company, the first and the favorite decision, or unfortunately, it is laying off the employees. So what exactly is the right approach? Why exactly the organizations cannot take any other stand instead of trimming their manpower? So I basically think that this is just a kind of an approach which has been going from several ages, because most of the time these business methods and the processes are the medieval or maybe the postmodern day stages which we have already adopted. So in the modern day business, if you see, the models which have been crystallized from the time of early 90s or mid 90s are still going on. So today if you talk about the kind of motivation of your workforce, it is same not as the Maslow's theory. So there was a time when people used to really talk about your basic needs, when we talk about your social requirements as your main motivation, and then we talk about your basic emotional requirements. But what we talk about today, which is topmost priority in the Maslow's pyramid, it is actually about self-actualization. Today people are more concerned about how they get recognized. So it is no more important for them that how they can secure their bread and butter, but it is more important also to know that what they are as an individual. So if you are basically keeping an employee in your organization or your team member, and you just think that they would be just following you just because you are fulfilling their basic needs and requirement, then you are very much wrong. And especially when we are talking about the crisis time, we have to understand that what exactly are the measures we can take which can be ethical at the same time, can also keep them more in integrity. Because you should understand that the kind of mentality which an employee goes through when you take a decision of laying off, most of them are scared. And that is why you will find in all the modern organizations where we have seen hire and fire culture, people are always under the fear. And that is why we do not find 100% integrity. So these days when you talk about value and ethics, I often find the biggest challenge is the kind of business model we follow. So when we talk about the people effectiveness, most of the time we are frustrated and we keep on telling that our employees are no more effective, and a time comes when we find them effectively demotivated, and finally we have to terminate those employees. But that is not the unique solution for you. If you really want to work out in that, you have to understand that every team and every worker in your organization can be effective. If you really want to work on the leadership, yes, my friends, leadership is the only lesson which is never taught in our conventional school. However, most of the business school claim that they teach leadership, but leadership is not just a theory. Leadership can be taught by practical experiences. Leadership can be taught by environment. So today when we give message to our younger generation saying that we have much hope on you guys, you are the leader for tomorrow, but first we should not forget that we are the leader for today. So if we are not really working on us today, then how we can really expect on tomorrow? So it's time for us to understand that when we talk about crisis in our team, there is something for which we are accountable. Most of the time, I have seen many top managers or the CEOs of the company, often they say that we are responsible for our customers. But I sometimes wonder, because practically it is not true, how many times a CEO or the top manager of the company directly interacts or communicates with the customer. Rather, I should say that the top managers are responsible for the people who are responsible to keep the customers happy. So it is the work of the top leaders to ensure that how they handle their people. If you cannot handle your people effectively, if you cannot make your people work out in a productive manner, then you cannot get ultimate productivity from these people. So I will be talking today about some basics which are actually very easy to see but easy to miss. The first I'm talking about is how we understand the matter of trust. Once I was going to one of my business destination and I was basically late almost by half an hour, and my flight was about to take off and I was pretty late for some immigration reason. So when I was just rushing, I found that a lady in the security, she was almost screaming at me. So I requested her and I explained the genuine reason for why I got late. She said that, sorry, I cannot excuse you. I have to follow my protocol. I tried to explain that you please understand that it is not my fault. It is because of the security reasons I got late. But she did not pay any attention to me. She rather kept on saying, I have to follow my protocol, and as a result, I missed my flight. Later on, I asked her that it was just a matter of 15 minutes. If she could have allowed me through the security, I could have easily boarded my flight. She said, I'm sorry, if I would have done that, I would have lost my job. So I immediately understand that it is somewhere the problem which is deeply rooted. So it is perhaps the problem of leadership. So it's a matter of trust. So there are times when people, you will find they're very productive and effective. So how exactly people are effective? It is again the trust, the amount of confidence the leaders have on them. Because many times you might have seen that there are people who are so proactive because they are actually ready to take on decision. So it is a matter of trust, and this trust comes from the leadership, and this is always top to bottom. So you have to understand that how much trust you are keeping in your employees. You need to understand the time is there today of liberty and giving them the kind of independence they require to take on decision. Otherwise, you will find that in your department, you will find people who are always coming with lies and lies. And they're always trying to hide the genuine reason. They will never face off the real challenge. And they will always try to hide themselves, because every time they are under a fear, they are thinking that if they are going to tell you the lie, they can save their job. But if they tell you the truth, that they are not able to handle the situation or what exactly is the real challenge in the business, you might fire that person. And that is why we find that most of the organizations are struggling today to find the real solution of handling the business. The second thing which I will be talking to you is basically about the safety. Because when we talk about safety, you think about the people who work in army or services, they're so much committed. They're basically ready to even give their life for their job. And that is not that they are getting paid highly. Maybe if you compare with the corporate jobs, you will find that the people who are working in corporate job, they are getting 4 to 5 times more salary than those people who are working in services or army. But the difference is the environment. So many times I have been just trying to understand that people are being paid highly in the corporate job, but still they are not loyal. We can still find that people are changing job after every 3 or 4 years. Why so? People do not change their job, they change their leaders, they change their managers. And by this I just wanted to tell you that most of the time when we become efficient, we are promoted to the next level, that is being a manager. But he ends up doing the micromanagement. Why? Because he is really being picked up for that role because he is effective in his work, but he has not been trained into a good leader. So that's why the transformation doesn't happen. So unless a manager really knows how to work as a leader, he cannot be an effective manager. Otherwise, he'll always tend to do the things for his own subordinate, and he will end up compromising the effectiveness and the productivity. So these are basically the cultural aspects. Now let me tell you that when we talk about the leadership, then 2 things come into play. Many leaders get into the business without knowing the game. And what I mean by the game, if you see any business, there are either finite challenges or infinite challenges. So when we talk about the finite challenges, we are talking about the situation when we know that what exactly are the various parameters on which we have to work out. Or we take an example, suppose if you take a game of football, you know that you have to play against a team of 11 players, and you have got strikers, you have got defenders, you have got a goalkeeper, and you have to really penetrate through the entire team in order to give the goal. But if you really just want to play in order to just not to get defeated, you will surely be defeated. But if you really want to win, you have to learn the real tactics of how to understand the game plan. And by first learning the game plan, you have to know not only the weakness of your opponent, but at the same time you have to know that what exactly are your strengths. And that is when it comes on working on yourself. So leading a team is always possible when you lead yourself. So you can always lead a team, first you lead yourself. And by this I would like to give an important verse said by one of the famous corporate leader of Visa. Do however consent that 40% of your time you should invest on dealing your individual. So if you can lead yourself, then you can become a leader for future. So I would like to tell you that today whatever we see, it is all because of the thoughts which we have. And most of the time when we meet the leaders and the top managers, we always see that they are very authoritative in nature, and they are always trying to ensure that the work is done at the end of the day. And that is why they give you the steep deadline. And finally, sometimes when people cannot meet the deadline, the end result is always a kind of conflict which is not very dear to you. And that is when you find those harsh behaviors. But why exactly we really come to that situation? For understanding this, you have to learn that it is because a kind of approach which we really follow. We understand that if we can motivate a person always by giving pressure and by fear, or by just saying that if you cannot achieve that, then tomorrow you will not be in a very comfortable position, then it is basically a wrong method. Because we have to understand that, for example, the kind of situation through which the business is going now, here we are all helpless. For almost 3 months, most of the business are shut down for this current situation. Now, if you basically want to evolve out of the situation, you have to understand that we have to have an empathetic decision. So you basically think that if your employee is not going to work or they are not effective, that is not the scenario. You have to understand that how you can change your approach, how you can change your mindset overall. So if you find that for the next 3 months your business is not happening, you have to understand that how you can talk to that employee from an emotional, intelligent way, how you can basically motivate that person. You have to go and understand that why the performance is down, what exactly are the innovative ways to do the business, which can really be a win-win situation for both of the leader as well as the employee. So I think this is the new era, and in this new era it is very important that we have to change our mindset, and which is always very important is we have to make them feel empathetic. And finally, I would like to say that if you really have to work on your leadership, then you have to understand in the difficult times you have to be very careful that whether you are a puller or a pusher. Because if you are always having a pushing kind of attitude, then you will always fail. But if you always enhance others, if you always lift up others, if you always pull up the spirit, you are the one who will be taking the charge. Because most of the time people understand that we are in charge, but it is not important that whether you are in charge or not, but you have to understand that you are in charge of people who are in charge. So you are in charge, but you are in charge of people who are in charge. And the day when you exactly understand this meaning, you will be more in a driving position. That is the position where you would be more involved, more dependable. So my friends, we basically have to conclude by saying that there are 3 things we have to understand. First, create a situation which is an impaling situation but not a compelling situation, where people are proactively interested to work only when they see their involvement, only they see that they are secure, only when they see they are safe, and only when they find that they are being given importance. And the second thing is, you have to always go for a self-regulation. So before we try to exercise the leadership on others, we have to understand that how much we are leading our thoughts and our decisions on ourselves. So first we have to actuate the decisions on ourselves and see that what exactly would be our reactions if we are in that place. Because most of the time we think that by just taking a harsh decision on the end user, we are basically saving ourselves. But the impact is on a long term. So sometimes you have to think like a parent. You imagine you have got 5 children. Now on a fine day, if you find that the performance of your children are not good, will you take a decision to throw the 5 children out of your home? So you have to think in that way, that what exactly can be the ways to improve, to progress their performance, how we can interact with them, how we can develop them, and that is how we can change the environment of today's organization. Because my friends, when the crisis comes in the family, it is not the only decision that we get frustrated. I give you an example. In the present time, when all the market is shut down, when entire Western market is going through a big turbulence, we find most of the IT companies and the telecom giants are struggling. But Apple has made a decision that it is going through a kind of futuristic innovation. It is basically going to study that how it is going to really change the next generation, how it is going to provide benefits to the future user in the time of crisis. So this is basically a kind of innovative thought. This is a long-term business plan. So you do not think that what is exactly happening today. You think of that what will be the impact in the next 5 years or in the next 10 years. And maybe you can exercise or you can process that project in the pipeline. So it is not about surviving today, but also ensuring that how you survive through the time. So of course, you have to survive today by ensuring that you are taking proper decision and the right decision by actuating on the existing problems and not by taking any decisions with frustration. So don't frustrate yourself, don't frustrate your employees, but make sure that you take a decision which can take you much above from the business frustration. And when you take an aerial decision, when you understand that when you come over from all these problems, you will see that these problems are very small. And you can only do that when you can come above the process, come above the business operations, and see that what exactly is your position, what is the position of your organization, and where you exactly want to go tomorrow. And finally, which I would like to say is, always we have to be ready to accept things, because now a new economy is going to come up, new business model is going to come up, and the faster we act, the faster we accept this, we are more in advantage. And this is actually going to be the real secret of leading ahead in the challenging times and the crisis. And I'm sure that if you really change yourself, change the way you think, change the way you lead, it is definitely going to make a decision to yourself, and it's going to make a difference to your business. So if you really want to make a difference to your business, please stick to this plan. Be empathetic, be practical to get the right perspective, be people friendly, and ready to accept things. If you are ready to do all these 4 things, I'm sure that you are going to get your next success for the coming times, and you can overcome this crisis period very soon. Thank you, friends.